Hi everyone, it's Divya and welcome back to Thoughtful Thursdays. For my first Thoughtful Thursday back online, I figured I would address a topic that pertains to firstly where I've been and why I've been gone and why I didn't follow through with the YouTube initiative. So we're about to get all up and personal in this house. It's a topic that people often ask me about, and so today we're going to talk a little bit about students who work, student professionals. So if you're a student, high school student, university student who is thinking about working or wants to work or needs to work, then this is the video for you because we're about to break down all the pros and cons. So let's get down to it. I'm going to start by giving you all a little bit of context so you know where I'm coming from. I was someone who was lucky enough to always know that I wanted to be a vet. My fascination with the wild and being able to put the whole nature conservation, wildlife conservation together with my profession came later. So I initially started off obviously being enamored and obsessed with small animals. You know, there was a brief period of time that I went through where I would literally bring every stray animal, every street animal home that I felt needed my protection. And having grown up most of my life in India, for those of you who have been to India will know that that's a whole lot of animals. So I've brought in birds, I've brought in dogs, cats, goats, you name it. My dad would come home every week to a different animal that I had brought in and had proclaimed that this was the new member of our family. So that's how it started for me, and I also went to a school that really encouraged this passion of mine. And when I was around 11 years old, I visited Cuba for the first time. This is Compassion Unlimited plus action. The conditions that the veterinarians work under weren't very good, and I think it really put me off. And I started rethinking whether I really wanted to be a vet or not, because I didn't want to work under those circumstances. I didn't feel like the quality of care was good enough. Cut to a couple of years later, and I was put in contact with the founder of Cessna Lifeline Veterinary Hospital through a colleague of my dad's again. And I picked up the phone and I rang him and we had a little bit of a chat, and he called me in for an interview. So I went in for an interview, and he must have assumed that I was a high school student. He was testing me on my background knowledge, and at that point, the Merrick Vet Manual was my Bible. So I knew a lot about the field because I was someone who really started early in my pursuit of veterinary medicine. And he told me, oh, okay, so when do you go off to uni? And I remember at the end of the interview, I was like, uni? I'm in 8th grade. Anywho, so then he took a minute there, but then he said, okay, we'll take you on for a couple of weeks and then we'll see how we go. And yeah, I ended up staying for almost 9 years, literally throughout my undergrad and right until I moved here to Australia. That's how I started working. Now, on a side note, that's my veterinary story, and that's relating to my career. As most of you know on this channel, like, I'm also someone who loves dance. I pursued dance quite seriously as I pursued music. I released my first album, Translucence, when I was 18. I was constantly performing. I joined a dance company in my first year of uni, and I pursued dance professionally for a while. And I was also really involved in the social work space. I started working with an orphanage called Daimane when I was 15 and continued working with them literally just up until I moved out of the country. So it was really important for me to have other professional pursuits as well. So everything that we're going to discuss today pertains to the whole shebang. Okay, so I want to kick things off on a positive note here and really talk about all the wonderful things that you get from starting off early. The first one being punctuality. When you have to start work at 8 a.m. and you know that they're testing you every day because you're younger than everybody else in the clinic or at your office, and you live an hour away, you just inherently realize that you gotta sleep early, you gotta wake up early, you gotta pack your lunch, you gotta pack your stuff, make sure that you got your water bottle, and you're at the bus stop, you catch the bus, and you make it on time, at least 15 minutes early, so that you have time to get all your stuff down, compose yourself before you start work. It also shows you like how much you care. If you really didn't care about your work, you wouldn't be bothering to go through all that effort to be there on time or early. Pro number 2 is professionalism and interaction. I had a friend recently tell me that I talk like I'm writing an essay in my head. So I think it's not, a lot of people found me pretentious, I suppose, when I was younger. But it was only because I was being trained to talk really professionally. And I knew that if I didn't uphold the quality of my language outside of the workplace, it was gonna rub off where it mattered most. I think that I was also really fortunate to have had good examples. Cessna put a lot of focus on formal interactions with clients and looking presentable. You know, even if you were being vomited on or pooped on, there was a way that you handle it. There's a way that you handle yourself. There's a way that you handle the situation. And I think that that translates to how we respond to such situations in outside of the workplace, which is really helpful. So the third one now is work ethic. Now, how does work ethic differ from punctuality and interaction? It's the whole thing. So it's your ethic at work. Whether you're ready to go that extra mile, how thorough you are even when nobody's watching, even when nobody's going to check your work. Now, for a work ethic to be appropriately sculpted, I believe it's really important, especially in these nascent stages of your career and your character development, to find a place that will nurture you. A workplace that will really put the time and effort into making you a good working professional. Not just a place that's really high-end and really fancy and is going to look really good on your resume, but they don't give you that individual quality time that you really need as a youngster who's working in the field. And you know, they don't make you feel valued, they make you feel replaceable. So I believe that that's really important, is to choose the place that you work when you're a student really, really well, because that will dictate how you see the working field for the rest of your life. And it will also dictate the kind of professional that you become. If your mentors and supervisors are all workaholics who are really rash and abrasive and don't really care about the people around them, then that's the kind of person you're going to end up being. Okay, so number 4 is it makes you really, really tough. You really develop a thick skin. Working in the medical field, let me tell you, they do not take it easy on you. No, sir. I would go into work every day and have people tell me to try harder, to work harder, to take less breaks. I was asked to revise my anatomy, to make sure I come prepared. You know, I was made to suture bananas and blankets during my lunch breaks, and to make sure that I committed everything that was going to happen that day with a case to my memory. I was always competing with younger men who were just as keen to make a good impression. And so for me, it really made me learn that we should always be more afraid of what we think we know than what we think we don't know. I also know that this can be really tough because when you're the youngest person, you feel the need to be taken seriously and you don't want to ask for help as much as you need it because you're always afraid of what people will think. At the end of the day, you're here to learn. It doesn't matter. Ask for help if you need it. Tell them you don't know if that's the case. Was really, really hard for me. So I will say that I understand that this is not always an easy thing to do, but it is also something that I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on and really ask you to do it. Pro number 5. Money! Money is always a great pro, especially when you're a youngster. I worked as a volunteer for a really long time before I got paid. And that was when my hours became a little bit more cemented. Now, the advantage of working as a volunteer is there's a lot more flexibility, and that's the option that I took, wherein I didn't have that stress of having to go in even if I was sick or if I had an assignment or an exam due, and I could always take breaks whenever I wanted because I wasn't being paid. And then once I started getting paid, there was definitely an accountability to the hours that I had fixed for myself. So I remember when I got my first paycheck, it really made me understand the value for money. I've always been sort of a minimalist. I don't spend money on too many things, but it definitely makes you appreciate the hard work that other people do to get you to where you are. Okay, point number 6. It is a great investment of your time. Let me tell you, when I was a teenager, I was a high energy individual. So I think it kept me out of trouble. It really kept me out of trouble. It kept me disciplined, and it kept me busy during my holidays. You really don't have much time to invest in unproductive pursuits. So I think this is a good way for youngsters to invest their time over the holidays. A spin-off from that point, which we can count as a seventh point, is also it helps you inculcate multiple interests. If you're taking up an internship at an office that is different to your area of study, I would highly recommend that, because it shows you a different aspect of your personality. It shows you a different aspect of your existence. It shows you a different shade to the color palette of who you are. Okay, so now that we're done with the pros, we're also going to talk about the cons and the risks of starting work so early. I'm going to say for many people, starting work is really important, but these are the things that I really, really want you to consider. I definitely wish I had someone who mentored me a little bit more through all of these things. These are things that I've learned through experience. These are things that I've learned firsthand, and it's something that I feel really strongly about. So I'm going to try to be as real with you guys as I can be. First one is it makes you really vulnerable, and vulnerability comes in shades of the physical, emotional, and mental spectrums. So physically, you really have to learn how to be street smart. When I put myself out there at the age of 13, taking public transport, working early mornings and coming back in the afternoon, and sometimes I'd be so tired that I'd fall asleep, dead asleep in the public bus, which is really not a safe thing to do. I think I can honestly say that I didn't take as much advantage of my parents' protection as I should have, because they definitely offered me more protection, and I actively shunned it away, saying that no, I just want to be on my own, I want to do my own thing. I think it also leaves you physically vulnerable because you're interacting with so many people, and people who don't necessarily realize how young you are and how impressionable you are, and also if they do, kind of take advantage of that. So I've gotten into some really awkward, uncomfortable situations physically, and I've thankfully always gotten out of it because some saving grace has been thrown my way, and that's why I'm standing here today. But it's definitely something to watch out for. So I would take all the necessary precautions to make sure that I'm physically safe and you're physically safe before you start work. That being said, that doesn't mean that you make generalized assumptions about your safety. So I once worked in Uganda where I was staying literally in a tent in the middle of the forest for a couple of months, and I'll tell you, everybody was like, oh, it's Africa, you're gonna be so unsafe, anything can happen. They were so critical of my parents, specifically my dad, for allowing me to go, but it is the safest I have ever felt. If there's one place in the world where I felt like I belonged and I felt like I was protected and nurtured, it's that place, and I would go back in a heartbeat. Whereas in the neighborhood next to my house, I have not felt that safe. So I wouldn't say make assumptions. I'm just gonna say that given each circumstance that you are dealt, deal with that accordingly. Don't allow other people's fears to affect your own. Okay, emotional vulnerability. This is definitely a big one. Yeah, making you tough is great, growing a thick skin is great, but in the process of that, you get beaten down a lot. You get emotionally drained. You get pushed to be really, really mature, even when you don't want to be. Like when you're at home, you have the option of choosing whether you want to stay calm in a situation or not. Here, that option don't work. You don't have that, escape button. You don't have the phone a friend option. You have to, stand your ground and deal with whatever situation that you're dealing with and show a lot of emotional presence. You have to show a lot of emotional integrity, and that is a draining experience. It's also dealing with your first sense of failure, and this will happen whatever field you're in. For me, it was my first death of a patient. So as much as you grow from it, it's also a really exhausting experience of having to grow up so fast. Mental health is the third side of vulnerability. For me, it was the really fast-paced work environment that I worked in, the hours that I was putting in, the seriousness of the job, and also the number of things that I put myself in. For me, it manifested in the form of insomnia. It's something that I've struggled with for a really long time. Even now, when I get really involved with my work, I struggle to sleep. So mental health is something I would definitely consider. Okay, so con number 2 is not having the right supervisor or mentor. And sometimes this takes a while to figure out whether this person is the right fit for you or not. Your supervisor and your mentor, they're going to be people that you spend a lot of time with. They're going to be people that you give a lot of your time and energy to. So just make sure that these people are people that you genuinely like spending time around, and people who don't affect your mental health adversely. I know in a lot of movies they show mentors and supervisors being really rude to their interns and being really rude to the younger ones at the workplace. For me, I would like the precedent that we set as a generation moving forward to be one of positivity and kindness and a lot of individual value. A spin-off of that brings me to setting boundaries. So really dictating how many hours you're going to work, when you're going to be reachable for work-related matters, how much of non-work-related, work-related stuff are you going to do? For example, how much of the stuff that's not directly related to what you've been contracted for are you going to do just as because of your work ethic, as we mentioned earlier, and where are you going to draw the line and say, no, I've got to go home, no, I've got to get some sleep, no, I've got to prioritize other stuff. So I think you have to set your boundaries before you start work. It's definitely something, and then you have to keep modifying it, and you have to keep changing it and potentially setting more boundaries or less boundaries based on your current circumstances. So boundary setting, it's a huge and very, very valuable skill to have. Number 4 is staying on top of your payments. This is really important because a lot of interns don't get paid regularly, and they don't get paid as much as they should. And sometimes they don't get paid at all. So I think if you are learning and you have signed up to be a volunteer, then volunteering experience is great. But then past a point when you really know what you're doing and you're bringing something to the job and you're putting in just as much as a professional at your level would put in, it's important to get paid because you're instantly valued so much more when they start paying you at a workplace. Okay, a couple of final points. One is regarding your sexual safety. As a young man, as a young woman, going into a workplace where you're suddenly interacting so much more with the opposite gender, it's definitely a lot to take in. You're young, you're eager, you're keen, you're enthusiastic, you're good looking, you're full of life, and anything can happen. So I would say really take care of yourself and make sure that you're not misled by anybody. Make sure that nobody tells you that if something bad happens, that it's normal, it happens to all women, oh, it happens to all young men. No, it doesn't. Get help, report it, and make sure that you're always keeping your mentor and your supervisor informed. If it is your mentor and supervisor, go one step ahead, but make sure that the person that person and you are accountable to are responsible to report to, that person is always informed about your safety. And finally, what I'd like to touch on is your childhood. So make sure that whenever you decide to start working, you're not compromising your ability to be a child. I can definitely say that I probably grew up a little bit too early. And then ever since I moved to Australia, I feel like I've been becoming younger. So I don't know what the hell has happened now, is I feel like I am way more of a child. And I'm so grateful to have been given that opportunity to kind of grow younger again. I feel so much younger now than I felt when I was probably 16, 17. So definitely make sure that it doesn't take away from your time with your friends and your time to just be a kid and your time to just enjoy life. Don't hitchhike into your career so early that you leave all those good moments behind. So what I would try to say is really think about being an asset to whatever workplace that you choose to work in. Make sure that you try to make their life as easy as possible, because when you do that, they can give back to you. They can maximize the amount of information that they throw at you and the amount of learning that you achieve within that short period of time that you're working for them. That is my take on student professionalism. And when it comes to where I've been, I had an experience where I was a bit overloaded with work and I had to deal with some difficult situations with my colleagues. So I really had to take the time off to get through my exams and to get through my placements. And I had a seminar that I was running with my team back in India. So I had to go finish that and then come back. And after that, I needed to take some time to get de-burnt out. I was definitely burnt out, and I hit a point where pursuing YouTube was not something I could do. But now I think that this whole coronavirus deal has been a little bit of a blessing in disguise for me. It's given me the opportunity to really take some rest and then slowly kickstart all of the projects that I left hanging and get back to doing some of the things that I love to do but haven't found the time or haven't had the space to do. So yeah, I hope this was useful. I know that a lot of you, and I know a lot of my friends, are just about to start internships and are pursuing internships of their own. And I hope that this video does you some good, and it's a reference that you can always have when you're working out whether a place is right for you or not. If you have any questions, if you have any thoughts to share, please drop it in the comment section below and I will respond. So yeah, have a wonderful rest of the week and I will see you on Monday. Bye.